Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Arnie Diaz show. I hope everyone is bundled up. I am definitely cold as hell in my apartment in Dallas. It's like technically like 30 degrees outside. Anyway, hope everyone had a merry Christmas and hope everyone's gonna have a good happy new year. Today I'm gonna talk about some really cool news things that I found on the internet. Uh, Ryan Coogler actually like literally talked about what the Black Panther story was gonna be if Chadwick Boseman actually lived. I thought that is extremely fascinating. I'm also gonna talk about Avatar and how much money it like needs to make so that they will greenlight Avatar 3. I think that whole Avatar thing is kind of fascinating. Also, 2023 is probably going to be the year Netflix is definitely going to be cranking down on password sharing. This is kind of a story that developed throughout the entire year, and it's really about the streaming wars. And I really just kind of there's this really good article on Collider that I really want to talk about with that Netflix topic because it's just fascinating what's happening with the streaming world. Also, I'm gonna review the new Whitney Houston movie. I Want to Dance with Somebody. I watched it the other day, and I wanted to do a live review just to get it out. I'm trying to do these so that I can just put some videos out instead of having like sit down and write. Anyway, welcome to the Idea Show. Let's start off with just one quick thing. Let's switch over to the article. All right, so Ryan Coogler in an interview, and this is a article from Slash Film, detailed the exact story beats for what Black Panther would have been if Chadwick Boseman hadn't passed away. So, quote from Slash Film, and this is quote from Ryan Coog. What are we going to do about the blip? This was the challenge. It was absolutely nothing like what we made. It was going to be a father-son story from the perspective of a father, because the movie had been a father-son story from the perspective of the sons. And it continues. T'Challa was a dad who'd had this forced 5-year absence from his son's life. First scene was an animated sequence. You hear Nakai talking. This is going to be their son talking. She says, "Tell me what you know about your father." You realize that he doesn't know his dad was the Black Panther. He's never met him. And Nicolas is remarried to a Haitian dude. Then we cut to reality as it's the night that everybody comes back from the blip, and you see T'Challa meet the kid for the first time. Oh my God, that's powerful! That's wild. He continues on. There's one more blip here. Then it cuts ahead 3 years, and he essentially is co-parenting. We had some crazy scenes in there where Chad, man, or a code name for the movie was Summer Break, and the movie was about a summer that the kid spends with his dad for his 8th birthday. They do a ritual where they go out into the brush and have to live off the land, but something happens and T'Challa has to go save the world and uh, with his son on his hip. That was the movie. Wow, that's interesting. That would have been fascinating. And also kind of it's interesting that like kind of goes with the theme of like a lot of MCU movies being about parents and children. If you kind of noticed that about especially like Endgame was very much about that with the Tony Stark and his father. It's very and then like him and his daughter. It's just like a that's a theme that like the MCU does. I really enjoyed reading that. And I can see that movie in my head, and I lament the fact that we didn't get to see that movie because it's a tragic thing that happened with Chadwick Boseman. And it's crazy that he actually suffered and didn't even really tell anyone about what was going on with him. Like even Disney was caught off guard when they heard about his condition. Um, this sounds like it would have been fun. Kind of like like bring your kid to work type of movie for the sequel to Black Panther. That would have been awesome. Uh, the next thing I want to talk about is if you guys have ever heard of Superman Lives, like if you listen to like any of the like evenings with Kevin Smith or like listen to any Kevin Smith podcast, he definitely talked about this. Kevin Smith actually worked on the script for Superman Lives. The Superman Lives was going to be it was going to be a straight up Superman movie that also had Nicolas Cage as Superman. And, like, the reason they were gonna have Nicolas Cage, I know it's weird to have Nicolas Cage as Batman, like, you wouldn't think that that's who would play Batman, I mean, sorry, Superman in your head, but, like, back in the '90s, Superman looked like that, like, he had like, Superman had the, like, long hair, the long black brunette, like, locks, and he looked kinda super skinny, and, like, that was the '90s Superman in the comics, and, like, Nicolas Cage kind of embodied that look back then, and I can totally see why they decided that they, like, put Nicolas Cage in that, like, pantheon of being able to look like that, and then WB, like, gave Tim Burton the reins to make that movie, but, like, what people don't like, the reason Kevin Smith is, like, talks about this movie a lot is because he actually wrote the original script for that movie. He was going to, like, actually be the writer of a Superman movie, but the producers of the movie read his script and decided that it was just, made by an honest screenwriter, and so they decided to, not use Kevin Smith's script, but they were, like, going full bore with production of the Superman Lives movie with Nicolas Cage as Superman until, like, days before the actual, like, start date, they like, WB just kinda got cold feet on the whole project because it was like it was a Tim Burton Superman movie, so it was, like, dark, and it had the storyline where I'm sorry, Superman actually died. WB has been wanting to kill, Superman for a really long time, and, like, that's the through line in this as well, uh, but they got real cold feet because of the real super dark tone that the movie was going to have, like, as production was ramping up, like, sets were already built, and, like, there's, like, actual pictures of Nicolas Cage in this Superman suit. Well, somebody, decided to actually animate the script and, like, put in a lot of Nicolas Cage, voiceover to kind of amp up the atmosphere. Anyway, this was made by the Lost Droid Studio, and just so that we can hear I'm gonna play some of it. I'm not gonna play, like, the whole thing because that would just be stealing, so I'm just gonna play a part of it, and then I will definitely put the description in the description, I will put exactly how to get to the video. So I'm gonna share this screen with audio. Bam, alright. So you can find this on YouTube. It's absolutely crazy. Alright, actually, I messed that up, I messed that up. Do this again. There. Let me share it with audio. Bam. All right, I should be able to hear it now. Bam. Did it work? Did it work? Did it work? It should be going. It should be going. There we go. It should be going. There we go. It should be going. There we go. Cool. There we go. This is wild. You should be able to hear the. Wait a minute. I don't think this is Metropolis. This looks great. That's so wild. Look at him. That is Nicolas Cage as Superman. I like that suit. I like how he jumps and then he flies. Superman. All right, there's actually a little bit more to that trailer, but I'm not going to show the rest of it. That's super cool. I it says that there's like there I haven't seen much news about this thing yet. In the trailer, it actually says that it's a series that's been developed by Last Droid Studios, but I can't find any like concreteness that this is actually going to be a thing besides the actual YouTube page. But this is just super cool. I love people just like going out and just doing their own thing and just animating their own thing and like putting this out there and like putting a full on trailer. I think it's awesome. It looks amazing. Um, that's so cool. All right, next thing I want to talk about. So this is the big story of the year, and it makes sense why it's happening, but the reason it's happening it's just like wild to me. So this is about this is a article from slashfilm.com, and it's specifically talking about the fact that Netflix is going to be implementing password sharing fees coming up in 2023. So there's a lot of reasons for it. I'm going to read a couple of segments from the article. So this is from slashfilm.com. Quote, 2022 was the year that Netflix lost $54 billion overnight. And in 2023 is the year that it will finally cramp down on password sharing in an attempt to monetize it. Continuing, Netflix released its first quarter report in 2022. Excuse me, and the reality sank in that it had lost all those billions, that it was on top of, and then on top of the other 50 million in value that it company lost when it first rang in the new year back in January, and the news broke that it had fallen short of its subscriber goals, experiencing its worst 24-hour period on the stock market since 2020 to 2012. Then an October newsletter to shareholders, the announcement came that Netflix would officially start charging for password sharing in early 2022. This is a quote from the CEO as he addressed the password sharing change. And he further acknowledging to investors that month via the Wall Street Journal, make no mistake, I don't think customers are going to love it right out of the gate. According to Netflix, over 100 million viewers now access the service using borrowed passwords. That is gigantic. That's a third of America using password sharing. I mean, that is oh my god, that's so much money. Like you can't fault a company for wanting to do everything it can to make its profits. You know, it is what it is, capitalism. But what's interesting about this is that what we're watching right now is an entire market share finally hitting its limit, right? The actual amount of subscribers that a platform like Netflix can actually collect is basically slowed down to a crawl, meaning they have hit the wall of as many subscribers as they can get quickly and fast. A lot of that is definitely the pandemic because everyone stayed home and everyone like got new subscriptions to Netflix, and then also people just gave out their passwords. I password share with some people for a while until I started doing this, and like I needed my own subscription, so I do pay for my own now. But it's really easy just to borrow passwords, and it just makes sense because they are bleeding billions of dollars. Not only can they not get any more market share because it's just saturated. That's it. Like it's just like what happened with cable. They've kind of hit the wall with as many humans as they can get into the system and into the ecosystem. And now like Netflix is doing what they have to do in that they're going to charge people money for actually sharing their password instead of like shutting down people who are password shared. So further on in the article, it says that their new ad-supported tier is $6.99. They also launched a like basic plan for $10. They've got a $15 plan, and then they've got the premium $19 plan that comes with a nice HDR. But they are planning to launch a $3 add-on password sharing tier to all of these. So, quote from the article: a $3 add-on for password sharing. It is also being tested in the markets of the countries of Peru, Chile, and Costa Rica for plans that would allow adding up to 2 password shares outside one's home. Subscribers wanting to log in from a new device uh, will have been prompted to enter a verification code sent to the main account owner. After jumping through that hoop enough times, some users might just bite the bullet and pay to share the passwords, or even start a new account, which would help Netflix recoup its lost profits. Which I totally makes sense. And $3.99 is not a lot, and I'd imagine that a lot of people will just do it. So that makes sense that they would do it for like $3.99 is not a lot of money, and I'd imagine they might actually charge you more depending on the type of service you have. Like I have the nice like HDR 4K package, which is $20 a month. I wonder if like I can share that password with my mom, and it will only be $4 that she has to pay, or like I have to pay to share the password with her, which would not be a lot for her end, right? So if two people shared that one subscription, that wouldn't be a lot. It's just an interesting thing. I'd imagine they would probably move the tiers. But this is also like a microcosm of like what's happening in the streaming world right now. Like the entire like this is the big thing that happened this year. Like everything about the distribution model got completely usurped this year. Um, you had the WB putting on movies on day and date on their service, and then we found out this year that that model actually doesn't work. What works is actually releasing a movie into theaters for a little while and then putting it on your platform, and that actually raises its viewership more than actually putting it on the platform first. I like no one knows what it's about. Like maybe we just as people like really like the idea of, oh, this movie was just in theaters, so I now I can watch it at home, and we just kind of have that psychological like put that thing on a movie on a pedestal more if it was released in theaters first. It's wild. But that we found that out this year, which is crazy. But now WB as a studio is just in shambles right now. The only thing that I know they're trying to do good is like they put James Gunn in charge of everything DC, which I think is a really good idea. James Gunn, you know, who knows story and makes decent movies, and like always works hard to make sure his stories and plot are always coherent and good, but he also puts really good emphasis on characters. The man knows how to do story structure, and he knows how to make a good, decent, like fun movie. And he also does know these characters quite a bit. He is a guy who was raised in the environments where DC Comics were talked about, and the guy knows those characters very well. It was kind of a blessing in disguise that Marvel actually fired him from the third Guardians of the Galaxy and then rehired him, because it gave him a chance to connect with DC to make Suicide Squad, and now the man is running the DC side of things at WB, so good for him. Uh, I hate that Henry Cavill is not going to be Superman, and I get it, because James Gunn needs to reset everything. I'd imagine that if it wasn't for the craziness that was the Flash situation, like it is just wild how the whole Ezra Miller saga this year was wild too. Like Ezra Miller, just like month after month, getting just arrested, and then warrants being put out, and then he was missing. Like, and the fact that what's crazy is the fact that the next Flash movie is apparently a good movie. So like they do not want to cancel it because they need to recoup some of their losses. But I'd imagine if that whole situation wasn't as bad as it was, there might have been a room there for some of the current DC universe movies, characters and storylines and plots to kind of come to fruition. But I think that was when the straw broke the camel's back, and it was just time to reset the entire universe, which looks like what he's doing. And I do think that like the Batman situation is completely ancillary to everything. Like WB knows its value when it comes to Batman, and they had to like pull the fast track on a Batman movie to just kind of keep that brand alive and keep it going. And I'd imagine, since I know that the second Batman movie from the new team is a go, it is happening, that I think that's going to be separate from the current thing that James Gunn is doing. But I also do believe that James Gunn is going to foster a Batman character in that movie. So like DC is wild. Anyway, back to the streaming stuff. Netflix has found market share ending, right? And then I've also seen dozens of streaming platforms that just kind of went gone. Like you guys know, Quibi is gone. Paramount, I believe, is shutting down its service and is combining it with something else. So things are starting to consolidate. Like apparatuses are not using as much money as possible to push for new subscriptions, and like new streaming services are not being built up as big as they used to. Like the war has seen its casualties, right? And the streaming war has seen its casualties, and it's definitely a lot of these smaller streamers, and the big guys in the room have definitely taken over, but the big guys themselves can't get new market share. So at this point, it is just about like keeping the platforms alive where they can be, and then making sure that they figure out strategies to make sure people keep watching things on their platforms, and trying to get as many new subscribers as possible, which at this point is simply about charging people who are watching your platforms and not paying for them right now. Which, hey, that's what it is. As consumers, I think at this moment, we should at the very least be happy that the streaming services at the very least survived. Like the big ones survived, and they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere, which means that we're still gonna get a plethora of new content that we otherwise wouldn't have gotten. Like the time of like the lower budget films are gone. Like the lower budget films that are not like big tentpole movies or not like medium range horror movies, like that stuff is all moving to streaming services, and you can kind of see why. Piracy is a big reason why those movies no longer make any money, but now but thankfully, now that we have streaming services, like those stories are still going to be told. They're just not going to go to the theater. Those stories are now going to be told on all these streaming services that now have like their built-in set-in audiences. And thankfully, like there are going to be new stories told through the streaming services that otherwise wouldn't have been told on the big screen anymore. Like that is the best thing that we can hope for, making sure that the environment for creation is still there, and that there are like ways for us to watch these things, and there are services out there that provide us with new creative content. And that's it, man. Like I don't know what's gonna happen next. Like things are pretty much stabilized right now. So like I don't see any new innovations in the streaming world. So like whatever happens next is basically just going to be a consolidation of things. I know like HBO is like taking off its Max, like its Cinemax line, and it's going to rebranding it as something else and kind of consolidate things. They're going to take things off of the service as well. So like as of now, I don't anticipate any new services. No, like that's done. There's not going to be any new streaming services. Like we are set in stone with the streaming services we have, and whatever they come up with is what we're gonna have. Like no one's gonna do a new thing. The market share is done. They've come to the point where they can't get any more humans on board, which is wild. But we have made it there, and I think I have made it to the end of the news portion. That's right. Yep. All right. So I wanted to do a little review of Whitney Houston, the Whitney Houston movie. I Want to Dance with Somebody. I do want to clip this out, so I am going to add a small introduction here at the very end. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Arnie Diaz show. Today's show, a review of Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody was starring Noemi Eki. Was a really, really super fun movie to watch. I really did enjoy the performance of Noemi. Her performance is what steals the show, and her chemistry with Stanley Tucci, who plays Whitney Houston's former manager, is the best part of this movie. And their relationship just flies out of the screen, and it is the best part of the movie. They also do a really good job of representing Whitney Houston's music and putting together many vignettes of her life throughout her life, and they touch and on musical touch notes. This movie really very much plays like a musical that is talking about the highlights of her life, while at the same time telling some really hard truths about Whitney Houston's life. I will say that I do have some criticism for the pacing and the overall screenplay. I think that there are a lot of really well done vignettes in this movie, and separately, I think some of them are very well done and very tasteful, and really show you the life of Whitney Houston and who she really was. But there is so much connective tissue between those vignettes that is a little bit not as developed. And by that I mean that the pacing is sometimes not smooth throughout the movie, and we move through time so fast and so frequently that you really can't get a real good emotional connection with the characters that we're meeting moment to moment. And even sometimes the editing gets to the point where it's a little knee jerky. Um, and you'll find it in different, and there's definitely like some emotional touchdowns that just don't land because the scene immediately after downplays that and then doesn't understand that in the kind of dynamics of the editing, that this doesn't go with this scene because it will either come off as unintentionally funny or just as kind of novice filmmaking. I do think that this is definitely worth watching. I watched it in theater with a bunch of people. Actually, I watched it in the theater, and like everyone around me were like bundled up in blankets and like not wearing shoes. It was weird, but it's a really fun movie to watch with people because the performance aspect of it is just really good. I found myself dancing back and forth in the theater when I was watching this movie, and people around me were doing the same thing. They do a really good job of like really putting the budget and the time in the performances. I do know that Noemi doesn't sing in the movie, but she does embody Whitney so well, and she does a perfect job of kind of not just mimicking but really embodying Whitney Houston's singing style that you don't notice it. I didn't notice it. I didn't. Her voice blends well with how Noemi plays her. It can be a little jarring if you really do notice it, but like Whitney Houston, also like one of the greatest singers of all time, you're not going to be able to mimic her voice in a way that'll actually come off the screen. So I completely respect that choice to not have Noemi sing but lip sync. But it does blend really well, and I really enjoyed that aspect. And again, Stanley Tucci is great in this movie. Every time he is on the screen, it is like a breath of fresh air. He is such an enigmatic, just fantastic actor, and you just love watching him. And his relationship and the manager relationship he has with Whitney Houston's character is really well done. And I think he and Noemi just have great chemistry. Noemi, again, great job. I give Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, a solid 7.5 out of 10. Noemi's performance as Whitney Houston is perfect. She does really well not to characterize Whitney Houston, but to really become her. And it really comes out in all of the musical performances. Stanley Tucci is a standout. Every time he is on the screen, he just comes off. It's electric. He's hilarious, and his relationship with Whitney Houston is just great. He and Noemi have a perfect chemistry, and I really do like the way they play off each other. I would say that my biggest criticism of the movie is that we move so fast through Whitney Houston's life that we don't really get to like breathe with the characters in the moments that we meet with. And sometimes the editing is just a little too choppy, and it kind of gets you out of the movie and kind of downplays the tone a little bit. But overall, I think this was a really fun experience. I was dancing in the theater. I was sitting next to people who were dancing in the theater. It was a good time for sure. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Thank you to all the people who have watched my movies and have come and continue to watch my videos. I'm just trying to do a thing. Thank you so much for sticking around this long. Please like, comment, subscribe. I'd appreciate it. I will do my best to also make sure that I comment back and reply to everybody who comments. I do my best to do that for sure. Have a good rest of your day. Stay warm. Have a happy new year. I am going to be coming out with a review of Glass Onion, hopefully today, if not tomorrow.